Welcome, fantasy basketball fans. This is Ken Kreitz with NBA editor Nick Whalen and NBA senior writer Alex Barutha here to do our first round mock for the upcoming 2021-2022 fantasy basketball season.
I am confirmed ready.
Nick, you have the first selection.
I am going with Nikola Jokic. Kind of a no-brainer, I feel like, this year after what we saw from Jokic last season. James Harden is in consideration. There are a few other names you could maybe toss around, but nobody that I feel is a safer investment than Nikola Jokic. The absence of Jamal Murray, a little bit of a concern for Denver from a team perspective. Fantasy-wise, I don't really think it affects Jokic. If anything, it puts more responsibility on his shoulders. And one of the most underrated things about him as a player and with regard to his fantasy profile, he very rarely misses games. That's huge. Especially in season-long leagues. I'm going Nikola Jokic, #1 overall pick.
That makes sense, Nick. Thanks. I should add, this is an 8-category league, so we are not considering turnovers. With that in mind, Alex, who do you have for the #2 pick?
I'm going with James Harden. To me, this is, this #2 spot is sort of between Harden, Curry, and Lillard. But I am going to go with Harden despite him being on the team with Durant and Kyrie Irving, just because Harden's percentages are amazing. He's one of the best passers in the NBA. I don't think any of that is going to change this season. He's been elite for so long. I'm very comfortable taking him with the #2 pick. It's a very safe pick. I really don't have any worries about it.
Makes sense, Alex. Thanks. That means I have the #3 pick, which is really, to me, a Damian Lillard, Steph Curry decision. I feel like Lillard has the safer floor, but Curry's upside seems a little higher, especially after he shot a career-high 21.7 field goal attempts last season. Love the fact that he also shot 48.2% from the field, even though he led the NBA and made threes. And surprising, Curry has 1.2 steals a game. So I'm going to go upside and take Steph Curry with the #3 pick. Nick, that puts you on the board for #4.
All right, I was really banking on you taking Al Horford, #3, Ken. This throws off my entire draft.
Big Al, it's tempting.
Yeah, for the record, I think you made the right call. I think Curry's upside is worth it at #3. I'll go Damian Lillard. You mentioned it with the second pick, Alex. It's either Harden, Curry, or Lillard. I think Lillard is still on a slightly lower tier than those other two guys, but happy to snap him up at #4. I think he pairs really well with Nikola Jokic.
Yeah, I think this is tough for me at #5. There are a handful of guys you could take here. Giannis, Towns, Doncic, Durant, even Jason Tatum if you're that much of an optimist at this point. I think I'll go with Giannis. I know his free throw percentage downside is pretty significant, but if you're in a head-to-head league, then you can just punt free throws and not worry about it too much. And obviously, he's MVP caliber. Has 2 MVPs under his belt. I think this season, there's always a chance after the Bucks win the title, they take it a little easy with Giannis, play him only 32 minutes a game, something like that, like they had in the past. But ultimately, I'm not worried about his role. I think he's still getting better as a player. I think he's probably more confident as a player. I'm pretty comfortable with this.
All right, very good. That leaves me with the #6 pick. And to me, that's a debate between KD or Luka. And I got to say, concerns over the big three and how they're going to manage rest for all those veterans in Brooklyn. I'm going with the younger Luka, who the Mavericks are utterly dependent on to go anywhere. His only flaw is modest 73% from the free throw line. He's only 22 years old, though. Plenty of upside. I'm going to take Doncic.
All right, I'm back on the clock at #7. If those 6 guys are off the board, that I think leaves me with 4 choices. Karl-Anthony Towns, Kevin Durant, Paul George, and Jason Tatum. You raised some fair concerns about Durant, Ken. I think the sharing the load with the big three is something that we were pretty concerned about last season, but we never really got a great sample of what that looked like, given all the injuries to all 3 of those guys, and that extended even into the postseason. So there's still some lingering concerns there. Obviously, there are some concerns about KD's injury history himself. There's some concerns about how hard the Nets are going to push for a top seed in the regular season. We know their eyes are on the title. I'm going to go a little off script here. I'm going to go Paul George. I think he's in for a huge year with no Kawhi Leonard. David Aldridge of The Athletic just reported today that the feelings around the Clippers are that Leonard will not play in the regular season at all. Not great news for the Clippers. Great news for Paul George's fantasy managers. I think we are reminded why Paul George was a top 5 MVP candidate not all that long ago.
I really like that pick. I don't think it's too far off script. It's a little bit. It's enough off script to where I think, you see someone take that and you'd be like, I could have done that. Like, I should have thought of that. Because we saw what he did in the playoffs last year. Was playing like an MVP candidate. With PG being off the board, I'm just going to take Towns. I've been like probably the highest supporter of Karl Anthony Towns, maybe on anyone who's been on this podcast before.
Only 85 games his last 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, his past 2 years have been a little bit rough. Personal reasons. He dealt with some more injuries than usual. He caught COVID himself last season, but he's basically been a top 5, top 6 fantasy player almost his entire career. He's one of the best perimeter shooting 3-point centers of all time. They're still desperately reliant on him. They have some more help with Anthony Edwards and D'Angelo Russell. Malik Beasley will be back. But Towns is still the face of the franchise. He's still a guy who's going to be an all-star contention. He's a candidate to average like 25, 12, and 5. It's really hard just to go away from him, especially as a center where his percentages are great. And in a head-to-head league, if I have Harden and Towns, that's kind of countering Giannis's bad free throw percentage. So that can help as well.
All right, so that leaves me with the number 9 pick. Thank you, Alex. Which to me comes down to KD or Jason Tatum. As a woefully biased Celtics fan, I probably should take Tatum. But I'll tell you what, I cannot resist the 2 stocks a game from Durant, the great percentages, and how good he looked at the Olympics. So honestly, I think I go KD with the number 9 pick and sort of assume Kyrie and Harden will both have a few injuries. And if not, he's still the biggest of the 3 dogs.
Very big of you, Ken. I cannot believe you put your biases aside and taking Kevin Durant. That's this is unexpected.
Community. It's for the fantasy community. I do what I can.
All right. I'm back on the clock. My final pick, if I'm picking 10th, and this is a scenario, I mean, you left Jason Tatum for me, right? I think I have to take Jason Tatum.
You have to. You must.
The face of the franchise in Boston continues to get better and better every single year, gets stronger, seemingly gets taller every year. He's one of my favorite players to watch. He's somebody that virtually does everything for this team. I think he's one of the safest picks really anywhere in the first round. If you can get him at 10, that's great. I mean, maybe he falls even into the early second round in some leagues, but he's a guy that maybe doesn't have quite as high of a ceiling as some of the ultra elite players that we mentioned at the top, but his floor is as high as any player in fantasy basketball.
And some news this week about Jaylen Brown's wrist not being 100% yet. So if they're gentle with Brown, that means Tatum has to carry the load even more. Hopefully that's just a first or second week issue for the C's. But it's hard to argue with Tatum, certainly young enough to keep growing. So Tatum at 10. Alex, who you got at 11?
Trae Young. Really impressive last season. I know his numbers declined a little bit in the regular season, but that was partially because he had more help around him. He played extremely well in the playoffs, was one of the more impressive players, especially given his age. I just have immense confidence in Trae Young going forward as one of the league's best point guards. He's pretty much a walking 20 and 10, one of the best 3-point shooters in the NBA, one of the best foul drawing point guards in the NBA. Now, maybe with the new foul rules where they're trying to stop people from jumping into each other, lurching backwards to draw fouls, maybe his free throw attempts go down a little bit, but ultimately I'm banking on his talent. Take a Trae Young, number 11.
All right, that leaves me with the 12th pick and generally the turn in snake drafts, which to me comes down to the 2 Lakers stars, LeBron and AD, or Joel Embiid out of Philadelphia. I'll say both James and Davis game counts scare me. And frankly, I don't know how much the Lakers care about the regular season relative to the playoffs. So I'm going to go Embiid here. 2.4 stocks a game. That's delicious. Plus, it's not easy to find a center with a positive free throw percentage, and Embiid shoots very well from the line. So I'm going to take Embiid. And frankly, then I would have the 13th pick. And here's a little confession. I might take Fred VanVleet, the new leading point guard in Toronto, over either of those Lakers because I am so concerned about their load management. Is that insanity?